Hi folks, Rudy Green here, and this video is going to attempt to explain the culmination of all of the research that I've done since the fall of last year when I posted a video. Essentially, I threw out my previous solve and started over, and I have done a lot of analyzing and evaluating of the bordering stanzas of the poem, specifically stanzas 1, 5, and 6. And this is all new material, so if you've watched any of my previous videos, you're not going to really see anything repeated from those. In fact, I'm probably going to just remove them because they're no longer relevant to my current way of thinking, and I don't think they're relevant to solving the poem. I don't even know what's in them, but I'll probably take them offline here pretty soon. So let's jump right in. Stanza 1 goes, you all know it. As I've gone alone in there, and with my treasures bold, I can keep my secret ware and hint of riches new and old. Now, typically, and I would say almost universally, at least for the people who are talking about this online, this first opening stanza is sort of, I don't know if I want to use the word discarded, but it's kind of just tossed out as, or explained away as, this is just a simple introduction to the poem. And I'm going to present a theory that I have come up with and developed, and I think it's original. I know there's some other thinkers that are working on the same lines as far as analyzing the words in the poem specifically to extract that little bit extra meaning. I'm not going to explain all of the paths to how I got there, but I'll explain my conclusion, and I'm just curious to see how other people might respond to it, because it's quite different than anything I've seen published online before. So if you have thought of this and haven't published it, I'm not stealing your idea. This is my original research, and hopefully it will be useful in helping to apply to your own solve. And the theory that I have could really be applied to almost anywhere in the search area. So no matter where you're searching, no matter what state you're searching in, maybe this will help tie together a solution for you. And although I have a few ideas specifically of where I want to try it, I'm just going to release it because if it's not working where I think it should, and somebody else is able to apply it to their search area, I obviously don't have the time to search all the tens of millions of acres in the Rocky Mountain, and other people are more familiar with areas that I haven't researched as much. So hopefully it'll help someone. We'll see. So I don't really have any notes. I'm just going to do this by memory. So if I mess up, we'll just plow on through, and hopefully it will be useful. So in any case, I just read stanza 1 of the poem, and the image that comes to most people's mind after hearing this is you imagine Forrest, the I, as I have gone alone, and we'll imagine Forrest going alone into the spot where he hid the treasure chest. And then the second line, and with my treasures bold, you imagine him carrying, or in a backpack or a cooler, whatever your theory is to how he got it there, you imagine him carrying the treasure chest there, or transporting it to the hiding spot. However, I will point out that this is an image that is generated entirely within your mind. And the reason is I am using and espousing a form of what I would call extreme poem purism, which is to say, because we don't know the I with certainty that that's Forrest, that we should consider options that are presented to us within the poem. Now, this isn't a completely original idea that maybe the I refers to something other than Forrest. I've seen theories about people thinking that maybe the I is a mountain man. Russell Osborne comes to mind. I've seen theories where people have suggested maybe it's Joseph Meek, or perhaps any number of various Indian chiefs, because we know that Forrest was very much into Native American culture and art and artifacts. However, logically, you run into the exact same problem, which is starting with that presumption of this being a specific person, it can't be justified in the rest of the poem. And when Forrest says that all the answers are there, or the answers are in the poem for all to see, I think that's the exact quote, that would kind of exclude any specific characters from history because they wouldn't be found in the poem. So instead, let me present another theory, and if I'm wrong or you see a different angle of it, please comment and tell me, because I think it's an interesting idea. What if the I in the poem, it's a noun, pay attention to the nouns, is referring to and the there. So in the first line you have the as I have gone alone in there. So we have two nouns that are essentially unidentified. What if the I is determined by the phrase in there? So if we can determine where the I is going, then we can determine what the I is. And if we analyze the sentence structure in the rest of the poem, there's a couple of other places that Forrest has used the same cadence and nomenclature of in, or specifically just the word in. Two that are clearly done that we have in the canyon. Everybody knows that from stanza 2. And then near the end of the poem, we have in the wood. So what if, and I'm not messing with the poem here, what if we take in there and replace it just in your mind with in the canyon? So again, we're not editing the poem, we're just reprogramming what your mental imagination is of what is being described in stanza 1. So I'm going to read it with that replaced, but understand that you don't have to replace that actual word. You just have to think of it differently than your default filter, which in most people's cases, the default filter seems to be, as I, Forrest, have gone in there. So if we go, as I have gone in the canyon. Now, what is the definition of a canyon? I'm going to look it up real quick, just so I can read it directly. I'm here at a computer. So canyon definition is a deep gorge, typically one with a river flowing through it. So not always, but at least fairly commonly, the canyon is a place where a waterway, such as a river, would flow through it. So what if we were to replace the I, the other noun in line 1, with a river? So as I, a river, have gone alone in the canyon. Again, you just want to replace that idea in your mind. I'm repeating it that way for purposes of imagination. But Rudy, you say, the river's not mentioned in a poem either, and you are correct. Canyons could contain a river, but they could also contain the second geographic feature specifically named in the poem, which is creek. So as I, your creek, later in the poem, stanza 4, 3, I don't remember, have gone alone in the canyon. Does that work? Why would a creek go alone in a canyon? Let me give you the big picture as it is in my mind. What if the word alone is indicating the parameters, sort of the boundaries of what, and really the whole of stanza 1. We're only on line 1 so far. Trust me, I've got more of this. What if stanza 1 is setting up the boundaries of the search area, and it's telling us that we're looking for a canyon with a singular, alone, creek contained within it? That's pretty generic, but this isn't really a clue. What we're building here instead is a framework for plugging the rest of the clues into. But if we don't know the type of geography that we're searching for, we wouldn't even know where to apply this. And again, as I said earlier, I think once I explain this whole thing, and I'm going to try and do it quickly, we're already 9 minutes in. I think as I explain this whole thing, you're going to see that this could apply to many different solves, regardless of how you interpret which are the 9 clues contained later in the poem. I personally assume that where warm waters halt is the first clue. I shouldn't say assume. I believe it is the first clue because Forrest said it is, and it doesn't seem like that's a sneaky. I don't feel like there's any reason to be coy about that. So let me get back on track here. Back to line 1. As I, your creek, have gone alone, single creek, in a canyon, or in the canyon. And it's interesting, we're not there yet in stanza 2, but I've also looked at the specifics which was mentioned, I first saw it in Cynthia Meacham's book, where Forrest, she recounts a scenario where Forrest pointed out why the difference between using the and is. And if we're to think of it this way, the canyon means, first of all, a specific canyon, but it also seems that in terms of people who have gotten close, they've solved both clues 1 and 2 together. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of searchers who are solving clue 1 and not also getting clue 2. So clue 2 may just be a gimme, which to me at least rules out sites like my previous solve used of Madison Junction, very popular search area. I've searched there several times. But if you start at Madison Junction, the canyon is in specific because there are multiple canyons that you can justify moving from there, especially if you loosen up the definition of a canyon. But I won't just talk about what I think's wrong. I want to talk about what I think's right. So keep following here if you find this interesting. We're going to go to line 2, and it goes, and with my treasures bold. So we have essentially 2 nouns or 2 references to nouns. The my would apply to the I. So if we're calling the I the creek that is contained within the canyon, then the my treasures bold are things possessed by the creek. Okay, so this might be water features. I'm not too keen on waterfalls, but you could count those in. I feel like Forrest has kind of shied us away from those, but then again, there's a big story about waterfalls in The Thrill of the Chase. Fishing holes, swimming holes, the headwaters of a creek could count as a water feature, as could the mouth of a creek. So there could be attractions that would be thought of as treasures that would exist within the pathway or the waterway of a creek. So I think, in conclusion of those first 2 lines, I think you can make a case that lines 1 and line 2 are nailing down the perimeters of the terrain in which the 9 clues will exist within. And I think we're talking about a canyon that has a single creek in it, probably a named creek. We know that Little Girl from India can find certainly clue 1 and clue 2 on a map, and you would have to start with something justifiable. I'm not going to get into where warm waters halt because there's so many possible theories there, it would be impossible to address them all. I'm dealing with structural ideas right now. So I think we're looking for a singular canyon with a single creek inside of it, and there are several specific water features along the pathway of that creek that the rest of the clues refer to, that Forrest is poetically calling treasures bold within his poem. And there is one part that specifically refers to, take the chest, but that's the only time he refers to as the chest. We don't know for certain, at least, that treasures and riches and the chest are all the same thing. And I'm going to argue that they're probably not. I think treasures bold is referring to water features or water or things along the creek. So, sorry, I got a little business email here to deal with. Okay. Now, the second half of stanza 1 says, I can keep my secret where, and hint of riches new and old. What is the secret where? That would be the next clue to unlock the rest of this foundational structure, in my opinion. Well, I think it's obvious. The secret where is where warm waters halts. So the creek, when it says I can keep my secret where, I think we're referring again to the creek that is first using the voice of the poem at the beginning of this stanza. And then that creek has a secret where, which is where warm waters halts. And so to me, my imagination immediately goes to a creek flowing into a lake. I think this is a better clue than hot springs or warm springs. And I think it sort of sets up that imaginative idea early on here in stanza 1. But again, I'm not going to try and make this all about where warm waters halts, because I got plenty more material to talk about with that in another video. The word keep is sometimes associated with the word watch. You might have the idea of keeping watch. So the idea that the creek is, imaginatively at a vantage point, because creeks always flow downhill, is keeping watch over the secret where, which I suspect is a lake, which is the same as where warm waters halt. And hint of riches new and old. So I think we're setting up two more points that will be identified later in the poem. Riches new and riches old. Probably water features along this waterway. So that is my analysis of stanza 1. I think stanzas 2, 3, and 4 contain all of the 9 clues. I have several ideas of how those might be divided up, but this isn't the right video to go into that. So we're going to pick up on stanzas 5 and 6, because these are also ones that appear to be discarded, so to speak, or shoehorned into the end of a complete solve. So stanza 5 goes, so why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? The answers I already know, I've done it tired, and now I'm weak. I think we're now picking back up on, now again, your imagination immediately goes, Forrest. He's going and leaving his chest for everyone to find. But that's not what the poem says. It says that I must go and leave my trove. It doesn't say the chest. Now, is the trove the same thing as the chest? Sure, it could be. I don't know that for sure. I don't have the chest. But I think the trove could be the same thing as riches new and old in terms of how the poem is structured. So in the end of stanza 4, the last directive, so to speak, says go in peace. And then immediately we go, so why is it that I must go? If the I is the creek, or your creek as it's phrased in the poem, the creek is always going because it's always flowing downstream. Physics tells us that. So the creek is always going and leaving its trove, the other items, the other water features, for all to seek. This could be indicating that additionally to the initial premise that I set up in stanza 1, that we're looking for a creek and a canyon with a significant feature upstream, from the mouth of that creek. And I think that is the trove that all are seeking. It's not the chest that no one is finding. And that's the difference with being precise with the precision of this language. So we're looking for an area that has a attraction that people, not necessarily searchers, are going up to see. And this could explain why people keep ending up at where warm waters halt and not, and they just walk past the chest. They may be there for other reasons. Maybe they're going up to an overlook or a place to get a vantage point or a new view. And they find the trove that all is seeking, but they leave with a very light backpack, as Forrest would say. Then it says, the answers I already know, I've done it tired, and now I'm weak. Well, this ties back into the same imaginative idea of what's being described here. I've done it tired has been hypothesized, and this isn't original to me, to be referring to a road. So you can imagine a creek that is flowing parallel to a road to its mouth, where the creek halts at a lake. I've done it tired because that is a road for automobiles or bicycles, maybe. We don't know how Forrest got up there. I don't think he rented horses. I really don't. And now I'm weak. When you think of water flowing, it is constantly in motion, but it becomes weak if it flows into something that is not moving. And halt is one of the definitions, at least, of halt. I'll look it up again here just to be safe. When halt is used as a noun, the definition is a suspension in movement typically a temporary one. So I think this is helping us tell, again, hinting towards what we're looking for at where warm waters halt. The creek is now tired, it flowed past the road, and now it's weak because that rapid, high energy moving water has now slowed to a suspension of movement as it halts and enters a lake. That's my idea. Let's finish this up with stanza 6. So hear me all and listen good. Your effort will be worth the cold. If you are brave and in the wood, I give you title to the gold. I don't have a conclusive analysis on hear me all and listen good, except that Forrest is repeating the basically the same instruction twice. So this could be a signal of importance. I haven't really deduced anything solid right there. However, when he says your effort will be worth the cold, I gained a ton of insight. There's a Smell the Sunshine video that talks specifically about this line in terms of a scale. And he points out that the traditional thinking on this is almost certainly wrong, because we're going, you're going, here's a bad thing traded for a bad thing, which doesn't balance the scale. Just go watch his video, and I think you'll see that in a new light. But what I look for, or at least one of the things I look for, is word associations, like I did with keep. Like I'm envisioning the creek keeping watch from its higher vantage point of the secret where, because I'm hearing that other word in the flow of that sentence, even though it's not specifically mentioned in the poem. But in here, I hear your effort will be worth the cold. Let me break it down real quick. Where would you be putting in effort? That's right, the end of stanza 2. Put in below the home of Brown. What do you put in below the home of Brown? Your effort. Those words go together. So we have in stanza 6 a few of the sort of spices or those last little ingredients to tie together the rest of the clues so you know what to do. So I think this is a callback to put in below the home of Brown, because that is where your effort starts, which will be worth the cold. Well, what's the cold? Well, I don't know. But worth is kind of associated, it would be an imaginative way to, let me start over here. Let me explain how I think this. The phrase worth the view is sort of what I hear here. When it says worth the cold, I'm hearing worth the view. Not changing the poem or messing that, I'm reprogramming my imagination to see what Forrest is trying to describe. So I think at put in below the home of Brown, you start putting in effort. And that effort will take you to a view of the cold, whatever that is. That could be, if you've been following along, that could be the lake that I have hypothesized is visible from the point of where the treasure rests. Lastly, it says, if you are brave and in the wood. And we notice a change in how the directives work earlier in the poem between stanza 2 and stanza 3. In stanza 2, we have these directions. We have begin it, we have take it, and then we have put in. It's telling the reader, it's telling the seeker to take actions. But then you notice right after that, going into stanza 3, we have more just like descriptions without any movement. So it says, from there it's no place for the meek. The end is ever drawing nigh. But it's just sort of describing something. It's not telling the searcher how to interact with that terrain. And I think this is then combined with these elements further down in stanza 6. So just as we combined put in your effort so that you will have the view of the cold, which I'm hearing as the spot where warm waters halt, the lake. If you are brave is the dare. This was actually mentioned in the, find my book here. This was actually mentioned in the Thrill of the Chase in the Dust Jacket, which we don't know that Forrest wrote this, but I'll read it real quick. It starts off with the very first sentence. This memoir includes a true story about a secret treasure and an outrageous dare. I think the outrageous dare is the "if you are brave" line. He's getting the searchers close, really close, maybe within 500 feet. And then he goes, if you're brave and in the wood, then you've earned the gold. Which means you have to cross that barrier to no place for the meek. Because no place for the meek is a place for the brave. That's how I see it anyways. So, and then of course it ends with, I give you title of the gold. I don't think that's a legal definition because the eventual finder will probably be fraught with lawsuits regardless. Who knows? So that's my theory. It's sort of still in formulation. I'm settling it in my mind and trying to marry it to a map. But if that was useful in helping you rethink the poem in a new way, I hope it was. Please comment below if you have any questions or ideas about it. I do respond to the comments, and I'd be happy to share some of the ideas of how I got there in terms of deducing this information, because I'm trying to keep the video short so nobody has to sit down and watch 2 hours of me explain my ideas, but at the same time, I'd like to be as comprehensive as possible. So that's all for now. Happy searching for those of you who are going boots on the ground soon, and I'll be back later.